Hey everybody, it's the Board Game Blogger. Today we're here to look at The Last Spike. Now this is a really fun block game, if you can imagine that. It's kind of blocks in the Scrabble sense of like a block or a tile game put out by Columbia Games. You know, they're famous for their block war games, so I think that's what they do, is blocks. So you use blocks here in sort of a tile sense, like Scrabble or like Uptown. And you're building railroads with that. At its heart, it's a land speculation game. And so the original Last Spike actually came out almost 40 years ago. And when I was a kid, I played that game to death. But it was really kind of a roll and move type game. I mean, it's better than Monopoly. It's land speculation on building railroads. And they've kept that core idea. So it's a railroad game with the heart mechanic is land speculation, which happened in real life. So it's a great game. They've moved it though. So before, the original Last Spike was actually the Canadian Last Spike at Craigiechal, I think, British Columbia. Here, the American Last Spike is Promontory Summit, Utah. You can see here we got number 119, and my history's failing me. I can't remember if that's the Union Pacific train or if that was the Central Pacific train, but that was one of the two trains that met there at Promontory Summit where the Transcontinental Railroad was connected. But I'm sure someone's going to comment out there and be like, "Oh, how can you not know this, you idiot? It's clearly either the UP or the CP." But it's really neat because Columbia has taken this old game and revitalized it with modern mechanics, and it plays quick. It's really strategic, and it's very kind of screw your opponent quite a bit, more so in higher player numbers, less so in a two-player game. Though I've played it a couple of times two-player, just with my wife. And she's enjoyed it quite a bit. And there's a few slight rules variations in a two-player game. Rules are really simple though. It's really easy to get into, and it's a neat game because there's a lot of railroad games out there, but not too many of them actually focus on land speculation, which really was what all these financiers were doing, both in Canada and here in America. And so components wise, it doesn't have the paper money that was kind of neat in the original Last Spike, because you'd have people like Gabriel Dumont on the money, and you're not seeing that here. Money is just tokens. It's a lot more playable. I'm sure Tom Vassal's like burning that one in forever. It's like, just on that, I'm sure Tom Vassal loves this game and like hates the original based on the paper money. But I just thought it was neat, kind of get you into the theme, especially for, I think a lot of people may not be as familiar with Canadian railroad history as they are American. So it made more sense in that theme. I think here they've kind of re-themed it, probably just to appeal to more people, but it's the same land speculation game, but how that plays out is totally different with modern revitalized mechanics that make this game fun and interesting. And it's one of those rare games that plays really quickly, and it can do 6. And so oftentimes, I've got so few games that can like do 6 players. I mean, I've got a few, but I could do Struggle of Empires and take 2.5, 3 hours. This one, it's going to be doing it in an hour or less if everyone knows the rules. So I really like that. I think if you game it all with 6 players, go out and buy this game right away, because you will see a lot of play time with it. It's good with fewer numbers too. It's good with 2. It's good with 3, 4, 5. I enjoy it with 2. I'm not sure if it's the best way to play it with 2. I would say 3 and up is really best, but it's still playable with 2. I think there's better 2-player games out there. If you're a strictly 2-player gamer, maybe this isn't for you. I'm not sure, but if you play with 3 or more, definitely look into this. Keep watching the review to decide. But if you play with 6, just go buy it right away. It's the best 6-player game out there that plays in under an hour and like isn't a party game type of thing. But let's go see how it actually plays out. So here's sort of the board on setup, and what you've got here is you can see, for instance, the different areas of America. And so what you need to do is connect St. Louis here to Sacramento. So it's not quite when the CP and the UP really started taking off for building the railroad, because I think when the CP was formed, it was already confirmed that the terminus was going to be Omaha, kind of Council Bluffs. So it's kind of set, I guess, a little bit before then for thematic purposes. If we zoom in here, let's see the Dodge City to Denver route. You can see there's E1, E2, E3, E4. And what you've got here is you've got different blocks that are going to be representing different parts, and they're each going to have a different cost. So E4, E3, and so on are all going to cost just a little bit different. So for instance here, we've got some blocks. Here's the F4 and the A1, and you can see there's a different price tag to actually build them with. And so that's important on when you're building blocks. And so what's going to happen is each player is going to have 4 blocks in their stockpile. So you'll turn it up here, you can see kind of what you've got. So for instance, one player, we'll just put it face down here, that may be the pool that they've got. So they've got access to build these blocks. And for instance, if on the very first turn, no one else has gone yet, I'm going to build the V1 block. And so we see here, that's here connecting Denver. And so no one's actually built out of Denver yet. So by doing that, I'm going to get the very first Denver card. Here, this is sort of land in Denver. So you can see it costs 0. No one could have actually bought land in Denver until the first railroad going out of it is activated. And so now I'm going to see every time it connects to a different city, I'm going to get $5,000. But now that that's opened up, sort of the buying frenzy happens, and other people can start to buy land in Denver. So the next parcel of land in Denver, that next set of lots, it's going to cost $1,000. And again, let's say I buy it on a future turn, I've now got 2. Now the payout's going to be $10,000. But now, land is getting more pricier. The great deals are getting snapped up. So now it's $2,000. And you can see here, let's say I have my 2 Denver cards, and then eventually Denver to Ogden is completed. So we got the V2, 3, and 4, that's all completed. Then that's going to pay out, and everyone who owns land in both Ogden and Denver are going to get a payout. But it happens sort of instantly. So if I buy up land afterwards, I'm not getting the payout for it. So here's the basically the rules of the whole game. It's really simple. You lay a tile, you pay the cost, you collect a payout if it connects, then you buy properties, and then you draw a tile to replace. It's really simple rules, but there's a lot of depth to it. Now, depending on how many players you start with, you've got different amounts of cash each game. So, if 6-player game, everyone just starts with 30,000, all the way up to a 2-player game where players are starting with 60,000 each. One of the few rules that's different in a 2-player game is out of these block piles, we're actually going to take one. So, for instance, I wouldn't know this, I'd just randomly do it, but for demonstration purposes, it would be E2, and we remove it and chuck it out of the game. We wouldn't know which tile it actually is. But that means that E2 here, this Denver to Dodge City route, could never be completed in our 2-player game because no one would have that tile. That's just a rule change in a 2-player game to kind of artificially create more tension, because in a multiplayer game, there's kind of more competition over connecting the cities, not connecting the cities. So for instance, again, if this is my hand size, let's say I've got this X4 and I've got somebody else owns a ton of, like, all other players have snapped up all the Yuma to El Paso land, and I don't own any of it. It might be a good move of mine to just hold on to this block and never build it, and hope the game is completed otherwise. Because the game ends once there's a total connection between cities of Sacramento to St. Louis. And it can go any way. It's the only cities for sure that will pay out in the game are St. Louis and Sacramento on any given game. Because, the route could go here, the southern route, it could go here, St. Louis to Dodge City, to Denver to Yuma, Sacramento skipping El Paso, or it could go all the way a northern route. You don't know how it's going to end. The person who completes it, though, and completes that last spike is going to get a $20,000 bonus. Now, at the end of the game, money is victory points. It doesn't matter your land didn't pay out or has already paid out, that's worthless. It's just money. So it's really cutthroat game, because what can happen is if you're purchasing land, if you're putting all your eggs in one basket, people can deliberately not connect that city, and then you're out of cash, and then you have to start selling land back just to have enough funds to keep building railroads, because again, you have to lay track each turn. So it's a really neat kind of cutthroat land speculation game where managing your money is really key. It's very easy to not have enough, especially if the other players are playing really competitively and are aware of what kind of land you've got. But of course, hidden from everyone else is which tiles or blocks you've got here, so which routes you can actually connect. It's a really good game. It as you can see, it plays quick, and it's going to play about the same length depending on the number of players. That doesn't really slow it down, because the game ends simply when Sacramento to St. Louis is connected. And is that, two players taking a lot of turns each, or, a lot of players taking fewer turns each. So it plays quick. It's going to be under an hour. And so I think it's a great game for those higher play count numbers that sometimes to get a lot of players and still be playing a board game, not a party game, or a hidden deduction game, like Werewolf or whatnot. That's tough to find at 6 players and still be under an hour. And so it's a nice sweet spot here. I highly recommend it. Again, I've played it a couple of times with just 2 players, and it's still a fun game. It's because it's unique enough based on that land speculation that just doesn't exist in too many other games. So I'd recommend it. Again, if you play those higher play count numbers, 5 or 6, and you're looking for an under an hour game that still has a lot of strategy, a lot of player interaction, highly recommend it. Still pretty good with 2 players, and it's unique enough that you're still going to hit the table with just 2 players. Anyway, till next time, I'm the Board Game Blogger.